a little bit shocked at the numbers that I'm speaking to today. It's about 2 or 3 times what I expected. I hope you can hear me. I've had a cough since November. It's not going to get any louder. Sorry. So the way this started, we've had very few, we have no essentially elected officers in this organization. We've had David, who volunteered as our director up until last month, and several of us are trying to fill in what he did all by himself. I was the only other officer. The way that happened was about 8 years ago. I gave a little presentation similar to what I'm doing here, but a lot less information because I didn't know as much, just about how to lobby the legislature. And I learned a lot of those things by homeschooling for 10 years, and Texas Homeschool Coalition has a program called Capitol Days, where they go and spend a day at the Capitol once a month, and they spend the morning training the families on the issue and on the process, and then they set you loose on the Capitol, and you go and meet with your assigned legislators and whoever you want to see that afternoon and take the information to them. Then you actually had the kids present that information. It was the best field trip we could have ever done, and we did that for 4 legislative sessions. So some of that I'm going to share with you today. And I shared that 8 years ago, and people said, well, could we do that? And going up to Austin was a little bit impractical for a group of citizens that are working full-time. So we talked about, can we see them in, or at least see someone in the local offices? So we started doing that. We just, I started making phone calls and setting up appointments with the locals. So we have a group that does these legislative visits during the legislative sessions every 2 years. So we'll start this year, probably around the last week of January. The legislative session is about to start this week, which strikes me as earlier than usual. I always thought it was halfway through January, and then it started and goes halfway through June, but it's like shifted up a week.
It's governor, lieutenant governor inauguration on the 15th, I believe, is the reason that it starts on the 8th.
Okay, so anyway, things are getting underway, and I'm suddenly trying to pay attention. What I have here, if you're interested, is a sign up. This is the list that I had from 2 years ago. Some of you may be on it, some of you may not still be interested. If additionally you're interested, sign up. I put a column for phone here. The reason for that is if something goes wrong the morning of an appointment, we want to let you know so you don't go there and you can't meet anybody. So that's why that's there. So make sure you're on my list. I will also send out an invitation over the Google group for Cybersecurity Tea Party, and so you'll get another invitation or 2. But I do this separate because we don't want to send out a lot of emails to people that aren't interested. So I'll send out emails about the appointments, about who's going to come, and then I'll send out our bill list and the things that we're covering for that next day. I try and update it the night before. All right. I've got here I don't have enough for everybody, but it's a chart, and actually there's 2. So both of these came from Texas Homeschool Coalition. One of them, How to Become a Law, shows it pretty much just from the House side, and the other side, tinier print, shows both of them and how they work together. So same information, but 2 different ways, and if you're interested in how a bill works, you can take one and pass it on. All right. So
we'll try to get those posted on the site too.
Different from paid lobbying. You're entitled as a citizen to meet with legislators anytime you contact them. All right. Either this is too far away, or
You might have too many heavy bodies in the way.
I can move if I need to. This is the best place to be heard from.
Why don't you get somebody to just push it back there, Linda? We went too far.
that we as citizens can participate in government: voting, political parties, campaigning, and legislative lobbying. So most of us, I mean, everybody in here, I'm assuming, votes, right? Many of you participate in political parties, and one of the things that we have done here as a group is encouraged us to be more involved, and many of us, because of that, became precinct chairs. Hands for precinct chairs? Yeah, quite a number of us, and David was one as well. So we've become, this group started with people coming together and saying, what can we do? How can we make a difference? And so these are some of the answers. Campaigning, I haven't done very much campaigning, but this past campaign season, I worked with the Abbott campaign and the Dan Crenshaw campaign. And my contribution was pretty small. I mean, like delivering yard signs, kind of small, or having a house party, inviting other people to other people's house parties. That's about all I did, but that was an involvement. And you have access to the officials by doing that, so that's valuable. I feel like Dan Crenshaw won't know my name, but he knows my face. And if I contact him, he's more likely to respond because I helped in his campaign. Okay, but what we're going to talk about today is mostly legislative lobbying. I'm not going to talk about lobbying our U.S. Representatives, our congressmen and senators. So you're on your own for that. I'm dealing with the Texas legislature, which is in session for half the year, every other year, and that's about to start. And I got this quote from Tim Lambert of the Texas Homeschool Coalition, but I think he got it from someone else, and I don't know who the original quote comes from, but when the legislature is in session, our freedoms are at risk. So that's why we pay attention. The power of contact, this is rather old data, and I've had to adjust it a little bit because things changed from when I had the original data. It used to say something like a letter was worth 20, but then the ricin in the mail kind of thing happened, and they don't like to get letters. So a letter or email, a phone call, all of those things are more or less equal, but an in-person visit is worth a lot more, like tenfold more and beyond. So if we make an in-person visit, that's going to make a big difference. If we make an in-person visit in Austin, even bigger, but most of the people that go to Austin are representing organizations. If you go there as an individual, that's a big impact. They're going to think, wow, if you feel that strongly about it, how many people felt that way but didn't have the opportunity to come? So that's how they're thinking about it. So we're figuring when we show up at a legislator's office here in town, that we represent about 100 people. Each of us represents about 100 people. So if we have 8 of us come, they think that's about 800 people strong with that opinion, and they're going to listen. So that's the power that we have. If you're going to contact someone about an issue, you do it single issue at a time. That's letter, email, or phone call. Single issue at a time. Tell them what you want. Do you want them to vote for it, vote against it? Do you want them to sign on to a piece of legislation as a co-author? What do you want to see happen? And then you give your reasons. So you need to have talking points. That's what talking points are. I mean, it sounds newsy or whatever, to have talking points. But that's what you want to do, is just have a short, organized way of dealing with it. So 1 to 3 things. So we have that, but we have more issues that we're going to cover in a visit. So we're going to do that times 15 or so. The first year we had, I think, 8 bills on our bill list, and learning how to do that it still continues to be a learning thing. I didn't count, but we had like 7 pages of bills this last time, and that doesn't mean that it's a long list of bills, but like we'd have one on sanctuary cities, one on hardening the electric grid. There are a number of things about affordable health care, a number of things related to Convention of the States, so some of those would all be related. And we would follow the bills and write where the progress was on that bill, and I would make note if the one we were visiting was signed on or not, because then we could ask them to, or we could thank them. And try and make progress on those things, and then we'd hand in the whole list for them. So, like I said, there are two places. You can visit the local office or the Capitol office. And the Capitol office, of course, is going to be a bigger impact, and you're gonna have a bigger chance of meeting with the actual representative. But you may not, even then, even if you have an appointment, because their schedules change, they have a vote on the floor at the time you get there, so you may end up talking to one of their staffers anyway, so you might as well talk to a staffer here. They have a system where whenever a constituent brings an opinion to them, they put it in their system, so they have it in a computer, and if that bill comes up, they can just look and see what was said about it. So either way, it's going to be helpful. So we mostly do it here. I'm actually open this session to taking a day to Austin. So we could talk about that and see if that's possible. But mostly we're talking about around noon on a Friday, about every other Friday when we get underway, to try and visit all of the representatives and state senators in our area. These are the ones that we visit. Up until now, we've had all Republicans. So this is the first time we've had a couple of Republicans that weren't really quite as conservative as we wanted them to be, but they were open to us being there. And one of the things that has been valuable about making these visits is that we aren't angry when we go. We just bring our opinions and logically go, and I'm hoping that will work well with Democrats as well. I've done that in Austin with Texas Homeschool Coalition. I knew they weren't with us, but they were very respectful because we were respectful and logical in our presentation. So if we do that, I think we're going to be okay. Not all of them have offices assigned yet, so when I looked this up the other day, I couldn't get all the information, but eventually you can. And we're going to talk about how you get that information here in a minute. The principles of the Cypress, Texas Tea Party are going to guide what we talk about. This is on the back of our T-shirt here. So we decided on these principles back 8-9 years ago, and I think the last thing that we as a group don't endorse candidates. I think I added that. I don't think that's on the shirt, but just to let the legislators know that that's what we do, and they're welcome to come and speak to us. We have had Democrats come here. They have to be kind of brave because the questions that they're going to be asked aren't going to be what they're used to. But we try to be respectful of that and have them come. And we aren't a political organization here. Many of us work with the Republican Party because we found them easier to work with. A lot of people here are also libertarian and even think of themselves as belonging to that party or they're independent. So a wide range of opinions. Okay, so these are kind of our guiding principles. And when we send a bill list, when we take a bill list to a representative, we always put this at the end of our bill list so that they know. Okay, the place that we're going to go, and one of the things that I was asked to do was show you how to follow a bill. So, capitol.texas.gov. If you Google Texas Legislature online, you'll also find it. But this is the website, and that's going to come up when you do it. There's going to be a lot of things there. I don't know if I can get the pointer over. Anyway, near the top is a little slot that you can put stuff in, so you can put in a bill number there, and that will come up. So you don't have to have your own bill list or anything to do that. You can just do a bill. So the one that we talked about today, HB 357, whatever it was. 357. So you could put that in there, and that will come up, and you'd find out who authored it, who's signed on to it. What the bill actually says, what progress it has made, that kind of thing. You want to make sure you're in the right legislative session. When I did this the other day, it was still in 2017, so you want to make sure when you go and you set up your bill list that you're in the current one, and that little drop down menu will take you to it. Up at the top, see that little spot that says My TLO, My Texas Legislature Online, My TLO. So if you click on that, you can bring up your own private. And the first time you do that, it will ask you to put in your email and a password so that you've set up your own account. And then you can get your own bill list. Bill lists and alerts are the only things that I've done. They have searches and connection to mobile devices and some other things on there that I have not used. I'm not a legislative staffer. It hasn't been important for me to use that. So bill lists and alerts are what I use. So if you click on bill lists, you're going to be able to make one. So I've made a title of mine now, and then I will put in the bill number and a description, my own description of what that bill does, and add it, and put in a long list. So like I said last time, I had maybe 40 or so. They're going to stay in the order you put them in. So if you know a number of them to begin with, put the ones that are related together, because it will be less confusing when you go and look at them. So you add all of those in, and then you click. If I've added anything new, I'll click Save. But every time I go, I'll click Run. And then it will bring me to this kind of list, where I can, it's hyperlinked for each of the bills with a little summary about what's going on so far. And that's kind of a long page to list, but that's what happens when you get your bill list. Okay, so that's what I'm using. And then I'll click on a bill, and it will show me who signed on, all of those things, and then scrolling down on that very same one, it'll show the progress from most recent to the very beginning of when it was filed. Yes. So that's the kind of information I'm getting, and I do that for every single bill the night before we go to see a legislator, so that we know the latest information on what's happening there. Sometimes, so a bill stages is kind of interesting. That chart that I passed out shows kind of the bill stages in more detail, but the bill stages here, if you click on it, it will show the 7 stages that a bill goes through in order to be accomplished and be put into law. This particular bill, SB4, I think that was Sanctuary Cities, actually went all the way through and became law last time, so all of those are green. More likely you're going to get something partway. Most bills don't pass. There are going to be 8,000 bills filed for the legislative session, and you're going to get maybe 100 or 200 that pass, and many of those are going to be honorary kinds of things that are just simple, that nobody has any objection to. They just have to be handled by the legislature. So we're talking about maybe 100 or so, maybe 150 significant bills that go through. So this one didn't. The last legislative session, so this one was filed in the House and got through the House, but the Senate never even assigned it to a committee. What was more typical last session was that it would get through the Senate and the House wouldn't assign it to a committee. We have better options this year. The numbers, the percentages aren't as good, but the leadership is better. So we have good hopes for our legislative session. So what is it we want our legislators to know? Looking at our categories that we used last time, and these were just whatever I figured out to put things together. We had state and citizen rights preservation, immigration and homeland security, marriage and religion protection, education and parental rights, life, that would be abortion, and also end-of-life issues, and free and fair elections. So those were our categories. We had some wins. These are some of those in the Sanctuary Cities. Several of them in the middle there are tied to the Convention of the States, and they go together. We got religious protection for individual citizens and private organizations. The previous one, we've gotten religious protection for clergy. So this was progress on that. Some CPS reform, some progress on abortion. So those were the wins. There are some things that we need to try again, and some things, like the right for fit parents, the Texas Parental Rights Restoration Act, has been something that I've been doing since about 2008, and it's been, or that's an odd year, an even year, so it'd probably be 2007. So that's how many times some things have to go through the legislature before they get enough attention that they get through. New last year was education savings accounts and tax credits. Those were some innovations that bring in free market ideas into the public education sector that I think are good ideas. The tax credit one was, I think, a Tom Oliverson idea. I might be wrong on that. Patient rights, we didn't get very far on that. Free and fair elections, we got some things passed. We have the advantage of Alan Vera is in our SD7, most of us live in. And he's an expert on ballot security. So we go by whatever his list is, and actually the Republican Party of Harris County goes by whatever list he and his committee come up with. So we'll follow that. Hardening the electric grid is something that we've looked at for a couple of sessions now, and it's only just barely getting attention. So you get as far as there's a bill about us committed to study it, and really we need to do it. I don't know if you understand, but Texas has its own electric grid, and then the rest of the United States has an eastern and western. Texas is independent of that. So regardless of what the rest of the United States does, we could preserve ourselves in case of EMP strike, which could be a natural cause or an attack by a high atmospheric nuclear weapon. Most of the electronics we have would shut down if we didn't have their grid, and we'd have massive death. So if you read about that kind of thing, it's really scary, and it's a fairly inexpensive and fairly easy fix to do, particularly here in Texas where we can handle it ourselves. So it's more about getting the word out to do that and apply it there. And many of those things could be handled by electric companies charging that upgrade within their rates without any tax increase. So it's a little, yeah?
Do you know what the current rating is as far as like what we're rated on our grid?
I don't.
The last time I looked, it was a D minus.
D minus?
And we haven't
Fred might know.
my knowledge anywhere to our grid that I know of. And it really needs to be really reinforced.
I know somebody who works,
Talk to
he's
Bob
an
Hall's
electrical
office.
engineer and builds those things, designs them, and he felt like we were pretty good, but they don't do anything in between large
I can go-
stations.
I can go on now.
Yeah.
Suffice it to say, there's a big fight over adequacy of the
Yeah.
protection. Power industry says it's adequate, and other people I happen to know this issue real well, they know it ain't. And it's really the power industry, the last couple of sessions, that have blocked that legislation. Get it through.
Yeah, so, I don't know what it's gonna take, but we are doing our part to try and get the word out. And this will be the third time that we will.
Senator Hall has he introduced it a couple months ago, we introduced legislation for that bill, and at this time, I think it's a different task.
Okay, so, following those things, that's what we're doing. One thing you'll notice here is that none of us has expertise in everything, but together we have expertise in quite a bit. And so that's helpful. We need to feed the information to each other so that we follow what we need to. So if there's an issue that you're good at and you want to follow, make sure that the rest of us know about it and that we can follow that too and have that.
On that same point, I know that on the 14th, Senator Hall is holding a one-day public conference, if you will, at Boston Capitol regarding that electric issue. I'm supposed to get an email in the middle of the week, in a few days, but I could just send it to the group groups.
Yeah, do that. Senator Hall was the one that, well, he had a meeting that helped inform many of us, and so that's how I learned about it 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, 5 years. Okay, so new things for this year. We had an innovation in the state party at the convention this year where we had legislative priorities in addition to the platform. And we had done that a couple of times at our SD level. For our platform, we pulled out of those, but what are our priorities for the legislature? And we put a list of those at the end, which was slightly longer than this list. But there was an actual committee, and Tom Novus was our representative on that committee at the state, and they came up with their suggestions and then brought it before the whole body. And these are the 5 legislative priorities from that. So we've got these, and we talked about constitutional carry a little bit earlier. Some of these I don't know the details on, but if you go to the state website, so Republican Party of Texas, I can't remember how you get there, but if you Google that, you'll get there. You can look at the legislative priorities and click on each one of those, and they'll give you a page of information about it, and they continue to update that.
And we decided to do it a little bit different or more effectively this year for the 5 priorities.
RSD chairwoman, SD7 chairwoman.
So I got on legislative priorities, which was my #1 choice, so I'm real happy about that. We decided to run it a little bit different. Before, the legislative priority committee kind of worked together as a group, and we were not as effective at what we were doing. Kind of like you said, your group took the people with the different expertise, and that was the people that ran forward for that. So the one that I'm on is religious freedom and privacy, so that'll be the one that I'm at. We just divided the task up, so that's the one. There is a couple things. We will have a white paper on each of the RPT legislative priorities, so you don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel. Those will be talking points that we already have for you. So if you are interested in any of the 5 RPT legislative priorities, let me know and I will get you the white paper on it. So you will have those talking points for that committee. We'd love to have you go either way, go with Cypress Tea Party. I'll be there quite often, especially as the religious freedom and privacy issues come up. There's 2 other ladies that are spearheading that. Doesn't mean that we won't cross over and work on one of the other areas. We just decided that we were more effective in taking the areas that we had most experience with. So there is another thing that I do want to mention that's really good, Linda, that we're looking at and that we all kind of chipped in to pay for. It's called trackbill.com. And it's real time. So like sometimes calendars all of a sudden pass something on calendars, put it on, it goes back to a committee that morning, and we don't know. And so you want to get there to testify before a committee like ASAP, and you didn't find out about it till that morning, and it's going to be on at 12. So this kind of, it keeps track of it. It's a really good app. So we started using it, and already, I mean, it's just like updates you immediately on the bills that you're interested in. Did you have something to say on that track bill?
I was wondering about that exact thing. What's the name of that?
It's called trackbill.com.
Track bill?
Trackbill,
That's a good idea.
TRACK.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's a fabulous app. It's just immediately updating us constantly. So if you're issue-oriented, like on the grid, it will tell you exactly what's happening, you know, minute by minute, basically, with that bill. So it's going to be really
So if you
helpful.
want to go there to testify, it's a way to find out what day, they usually virtually know if they have to know or something, kind of things.
Yes,
Is
yes.
it bill-based or talking based?
It's, you can do it either way. You can follow it by bill or author or sponsor or by issue.
That's terrific. Oh, that's
Okay, thank
15
you.
years.
Yes.
Good information. So all of us together, I think we're going to make some progress. We looked at our legislative priorities, and you're not going to be able to read this. I'm just kind of showing you. We have a lot of them that we put at the back of our SD platform, SD7 platform last spring. Several of us here worked on that. Tom Novus was one. Bill Ely was one. Did you do that, Bill? I can't remember. No, you didn't this year, you've done it before. So I did that, and Mark Ramsey was our chair, and actually he chaired the platform at the state convention, and we did some innovations there that I think are helpful, that I'll talk about in a minute. Anyway, so we had these legislative priorities and bill numbers, or platform numbers, but they're not gonna relate to the state platform because those numbers all change when things get moved around. But because I kept it from the county convention, I can go and look at what those priorities were and how the wording was, in case it didn't make it to the state convention. We had quite a lot from our platform that made it to the state convention. I was pleased about that. More bills that we want to see. One of the things that I'm looking at that is new, we had it in our SD platform, but also in the state platform, is striking the obscenity exemption in the Texas Penal Code that allows harmful material to be shown to minors in schools. And one of the things about sex education has been that they've been able to put things in there that any normal citizen would not want in there, and they had this exemption so they could just hide things there. And so that eliminates that. And another one was that's related to that, that's also in the platform, is preventing any funding to outside sources such as Planned Parenthood to provide, so any third-party source to provide sex education in the schools. There's also one to eliminate sex education in the schools altogether, but if you're not gonna get that, then you get incremental things, and there's always a debate. Do you go whole board, do you do incremental? And probably you need to do temporal things at the same time. Abby's Law was an interesting one that was titled for a particular victim, and it was asking for 90-day turnaround in getting justice, not having the entire process done, but higher priority in getting all the testing done and the forensics and things like that needed to be done. One of the things related to ballot security is the nursing home rules. One of the things that has been done by the other party, not ours, as far as I know ever, they go and they assign, they ask for ballots for all of the people that live in the nursing home, whether the person there has asked for it or could ask for it. And then they fill it out the way they want, and then they turn it in without that person ever seeing their ballot. So that needs to stop. So this bill, we'd like to see a bill do that. Border security, of course, is another thing. Pro-life progress. One of the things that we made progress on last time was dismemberment abortion. Since then, many other states have done a heartbeat level. If you can identify the heartbeat, then you can't abort after that. And that comes pretty quick. The better technology comes. So that's coming in 8 to 10 weeks, certainly by 12. So that would be progress, and that's going through courts in other states, but that's one thing that we're looking at.
Does the plank number have relevance to?
So if I've written a plank number here, that's the state platform now.
So the like 112 is ahead of 320, I mean, that's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Some of those really high numbers were things that got missed, and so they had an addition, so they might show up not at the end, they might show up earlier.
It's not necessarily a priority though.
No, it's not a priority.
It's just
how
where it is.
So one of the innovations that we had in our state platform this year that Mark Ramsey implemented was to assign sections of the platform according to the way that state Senate committees are assigned. So those are the sections of the platform. So if you have an idea of what committee you're going to be dealing with, then you can look in that section of the platform and find out what we've said, and then look for bills related to that. And if there's something specific that you want and you don't know of a bill yet, contact your legislator and say, is there a bill related to this issue that's important to me? And that would help us get a bill if there isn't one already written. They can continue to write bills up until probably
March, I think.
March. There's a deadline somewhere in there, but up until then, they can continue to file bills. They started filing bills probably mid-November. Is that when it started, Tom?
12th of November, I think.
So Tom's been really good about keeping a list, and he updates us a couple of times a week with the new list in an Excel form. So he's gone through every bill that's been filed and then looked at what category it fits in, whether or not we are for or against it, or some of them were neutral, and who the legislator is that wrote the bill, and a lot of information like that. So he does way more than I do so far about what the
Let me
specific bills.
phrase that a little bit. The for or against it is my view of the bill, so it's not somebody else's necessarily view, and it's based on my reading of what the bill says. If you ever read through these bills, it's got a lot of legal stuff, and they underline sections that are new, but it's somewhat complicated. And I've actually had gone to the Texas code that the bill is based on to try and identify what it's really saying in some cases.
Yeah. When you're looking at thousands of bills by then, that's a really tough thing to do. So he makes a good point, though. We don't require everybody to agree. And if you come on our visits with us and you have a different view, you can express your view in addition to my view or whoever. And we've done that. Kate Burkhalter was not in favor of many of the abortion positions that we took, and she just said so afterward, was respectful to us, and we just, as long as you want to come with us and agree where you agree, you're welcome to do that. David, and then
you had made mention that many bills are filed and things kind of get sorted out where one bill on the subject will actually be the one that kind of gets forwarded on. How do you sort that out?
Yeah, there may be a better way. I'm not real good at guessing ahead of time. So I'll write down a bill, and I have a few sources for figuring out bill numbers. I look at things that people tell me. So if you put something out on our Google group that alerts me to something, I will look at that and take that into account and possibly use that bill number. Sometimes I find out that there are companion bills and they're exactly the same, and I'll put them all together as companion bills in my document here and watch what's moving. And sometimes there'll be a completely different one than I expected to move, but it's the one that moves finally in late March, early April, and so we push that a little more because it's the issue that we want to have happen, especially if the wording is the same. If there's a wording difference, then we'll go for whatever we really want to have happen. I use Texas Homeschool Coalition for a lot of education things because that's what I'm connected to. That's a high priority for a number of our legislators and Dan Patrick. And there are people that are going to understand school financing far better than I do because personally, as a homeschooler, I was totally in favor of getting rid of public education and doing it some other way. And that's a radical position that nobody else holds. I think that if we did it by the free market, we could, and any time we can get the free market in there, but incremental. So, okay.
Well, in the legislative website, there's an area where everything is in plain English. So you have the bill in billese, if you could say that.
Yeah.
And then it's deduced and analyzed in an organized, condensed version. So that really helps you understand it.
Yes, that's true. And if we backed up to where that is, you can get the bill language, the actual bill language, and then you can get the summary. I think that's what
Yeah,
they call it.
summary.
And sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you need more. I'm also looking at news articles, a lot of them posted on Facebook or wherever that link to something that I'm not normally seeing every day, but that will give me a bigger picture about what that is. Empower Texans puts out information. There are a number of other groups that put out
Texas Tribune?
information. What?
The Texas Tribune is a good resource.
Texas Tribune?
Yeah, and so is the Quorum Report.
quorum report.
Those are places that track a lot.
So if
of
you
it.
see things in those, because those aren't things that I'm normally connected to,
Yeah, well,
pass them along.
They track everything.
And that is how we get our bill numbers, so more than we can handle, but kind of along the lines of those priorities. But if there's something, I mean, we had some fish and game things that we're the expert on, and we didn't know anything on them. And so we just add that section in there, and then we turn the meeting over to him when it got to that point, and that's kind of how we do it. Okay?
A couple things. One, if one is interested in following a bill, that online tool is really, it actually works really well. I've done that a couple of sections. Another point I was going to make, going to say that the bill language that I've seen is 2 or 3 pages long, very easy to read. Everywhere I've been reading is a summary instead. But what I've seen is, I was going to say, these are these 300, 500 page monsters with.
Most of the bills in our legislature are not the monstrosities that you see in the federal government, because we're not turning things over to bureaucratic agencies. That's not really how we do things in Texas anymore. So most of them are just changing language within the Texas code. And you can read that and understand it, but like Tom says, it takes a little bit of a legal mind to do that. Sometimes I turn to my son to help me with stuff like that. I can't tell if this is gonna do this or this. What do you think? And, or somebody else that has that expertise, because it's hard to know. If a politician says all the things that you wanna hear, and then they put out a bill that you're not sure is gonna do that, you know the problem. And so it's up to you to figure out what it's really gonna do, and then tell the politician, no, I think you're wrong on this. I think you better change this language, or change this bill, or go against this one for whatever reason, and that's why we contact them. Okay. I guess that was the end. So if you want to be part of this, make sure you're on my list, or make sure you respond to an invitation or in the Google group, and then I'll get you on the list, and we'll just stay connected. So when I set an appointment, you'll need to let me know whether you can make it or not that day. We'll need to know approximately how many are coming. We really never want a day where I have to go alone, and I never have. I've had at least one other every time, but most of the time there are 6 or 8 of us, sometimes 11 or 12. Some people sign up on this and they can't make it, but they just want to follow what we're doing, and please feel free to do that. So, any other questions about, yeah?
With what's been happening here in the last 2 weeks in regard to drunk drivers, is that, I mean, I haven't followed any of this, I'm just learning through you. Is that something that's being looked at? I sent a long email to Dan Patrick this week, because our rules are just, everybody's out on bond killing people.
Yeah, I don't know. And so we're in a quandary here in Harris County, where we didn't used to be, because we have a district attorney whose goal is to empty the prisons, and it tends to be related to drug things more than drunk driving, but those are very similar. So it could be that issue that's happening, and I don't know what we can do about that except get a better DA the next time around, which means
We need to change our laws.
yeah. So try that, and then you have to force the judge to implement it. So that's good. Another thing that happened was that our county judge, and our county judge position is one of the largest executive positions in the United States. I think there are only 2 entities that are larger: Los Angeles County and New York City. And it's bigger than anything else. And we just threw out an experienced person who'd been handling our floods and keeping our costs under control. And we hired a 27-year-old in her first job out of college. Because she was a Democrat, and that's how that went. So until we can fix that situation, we're kind of in a trouble. There was one other thing. Oh, about the school safety thing. That's another thing that we want to follow. And if you get a bill that we should follow on that. It was part of our platform, because the school shooting in Florida happened just about a week or so before we met with the platform committee for SD7. So we made sure that it got put in there. And one of the concepts that we like is that, somebody else mentioned this here, if the entity does not allow the public to protect themselves, such as in a school or something else, then that entity must protect the public. And schools, if they're going to be in that position, they need to show us that, and they're requiring us to put our children there, they need to show us that they're going to protect the children or they're going to be held accountable. And how that happens, I don't know, but it's got to happen.
Yeah, another thing, when we talk about taxpayer-funded lobbying, there was an article that came out in the Impact. Cy-Fair ISD is gonna spend at least $200,000 this year on lobbying Austin.
Wow.
Now, the thing they do say too is that they make sure that those funds don't come from taxpayers. But it's just offsetting other funds that would have otherwise been used for other things, so don't fall for that.